Jai Gurudev, my dear children. Happy morning to every one of you. Hope all of you are safe and healthy. I know that all our children are very good and obey their parents and elders. Stay home, eat healthy, and be happy. You little ones like to listen to stories. Stories are sometimes imagination and sometimes narration of what happened in the past. You always love to listen to your parents and grandparents telling about how you were and what you did when you were small, or when they narrate about some incidents from their childhood. Am I right? Then definitely I bet you love history, because history is nothing but recreation of the past and tells you about our ancestors, forefathers, kings, queens, princes, etc. etc. Sounds fabulous, is it not? In this lesson, on the trail of the earliest people, you would learn about our ancestors, who will be referred to as early men. How they led their lives, how they got their food, and where did they live, all these things. Shall we move on to the lesson, dear ones? No, we are not going to go to the lesson now. Then imagine that we are going to go to prehistoric period in a time machine and see them live in action. Ready? Here we go. Fasten your seat belts and zoom. What will I learn in this lesson? This lesson is about on the trail of earliest people, and below are a few things that you will be learning. Hunting and gathering as a way of life, introduction to stone tools and their use, case study, the Deccan. Here is an interesting story with some awesome artwork. Are you ready for this amazing form of storytelling? Tushar's train travel. Tushar was going from Delhi to Chennai for his cousin's wedding. They were traveling by train and he had managed to squeeze into the window seat. His nose was glued to the glass pane and he was excited about going to Chennai because things there were very different than in his city of Delhi. He just loved how fast train could move and take people to new faraway places. As he watched trees and houses fly past, his uncle tapped his shoulder.
Do you know that trains were first used only about 150 years ago and people began using buses a few decades later?
Really? So trains are older than buses? Then how did people travel before there were trains?
We know about people who lived in the Indian subcontinent as early as 2 million years ago. Today, we call them hunter-gatherers because generally they hunted wild animals, caught fish and birds, and gathered fruits, roots, nuts, seeds, leaves, stalks, and eggs. Because the land in and around India has a tropical, monsoon-type climate, it had millions of varieties of plants and animals, and gathering plant produce was extremely important way of getting food. But not one of these things was easy to do.
Most animals run faster than us, and many are stronger. To hunt animals or catch fish and birds, you have to be alert, quick, and have lots of creativity and presence of mind. To collect plant produce, you need to find out which plants or parts of plants are edible that can be eaten, and which are poisonous. You also need to find out about the seasons when the fruits ripen and many other things about nature. Just think about all the different skills that the grown-up and children of those times must have had.
There are at least 4 reasons why hunter-gatherers kept traveling and moving from place to place. First, if they stayed in one place for a long time, they would eat up all the available plant and animal resources, simply because the speed at which we eat food is more than the speed at which food grows. So, they would go to a place, use up all the resources there, and then move to another place in search of food.
Second, animals move from place to place. Herbivores move in search of grass, and carnivores follow them. So, animals also moved to look for food, and people who hunted and ate those animals also moved and followed them.
Third, plants and trees bear food in different seasons. So, people moved from season to season in search of different kinds of plant food to eat. Fourth, people, plants, and animals need water. Water is found in lakes, streams, and rivers. While many rivers and lakes are perennial, have water throughout the year, others are seasonal. People living near seasonal water supplies had to move in search of water during the dry seasons, that is, winter and summer.
Besides, people may have traveled to meet their friends and relatives, but remember, they always traveled on foot. They walked to everywhere they went. Compare this with how far you have ever walked.
How do we know about the past? If we look at the earliest stone tools and compare them to those from, say, about 10,000 years ago, we see that with time the tools kept getting sharper and finer. We can learn from this how our brains developed over years. Archaeologists have found some of the things hunter-gatherers made and used. Who are archaeologists? They are experts who study the people of the past and their habits. It's likely that people made and used tools of stone, wood, and bone, of which stone tools have survived best. Think about all the work that can be done with stone tools and which shapes of tools will be needed for which work. Some of these stone tools were used to cut meat and bone, scrape bark and hides, bark from trees, and hides, animal skins from the animals, chop fruits and roots. Some may have been attached to handles of bone or wood to make spears and arrows for hunting. Other tools were used to chop wood, which was used as firewood. Wood was also used to make huts and tools. Choosing a place to live in. Where did the early men live? Did they live in houses and apartments as we live today? Then how did they live? Where did they live? As stone tools were important to them, the earliest people tried to find places where they could easily get quality stone. Such places where stone was found and where people made tools are known as factory sites. And how do archaeologists know where these factories were? Because we usually find blocks of stone, tools that were made and perhaps thrown away because they were not perfect, and chips of waste stone left behind at these sites. And if people lived at such a site for a long time, that site is then called a habitation cum factory site. What is meant by habitation? Habitation means a place where people lived. And as you all know, a factory is a place where people used to work. So, a habitation cum a factory site means a place where people lived and worked. Some sites, such as the Bhimbetka in present-day Madhya Pradesh in central India, are known as habitation sites because the people lived there and they worked too. These include natural caves and rock shelters. So, the early men used to live in natural caves and rock shelters, and not only that, even on the treetops. That people chose to live in because they gave them shelter from the rain, heat, and wind. Natural caves and rock shelters are found in Vindhyas and in the Deccan Plateau, and these rock shelters are close to the Narmada Valley, which made life there easier than in places without fresh water and good weather. Making stone tools. Stone tools were probably made using two different techniques. The first is called stone on stone. Here, the pebble from which the tool was to be made, also called the core, was held in one hand. So, the core is the one which is going to be converted into the tool. And another stone, which was used as a hammer, was held in the other hand. So, the another stone is used to make this tool. The core is the one from which we are going to get the tool, and another stone is used to make the stone tool. The second stone was used to strike off flakes from the first till they got the right shape they needed. In the second method, called pressure flaking, the core was placed on a firm surface. Firm surface, a rigid one, a strong one. So the core, the stone which is going to be converted to a tool, was placed on a very strong surface, a rigid surface. Then a hammer stone was used on a piece of bone or stone, and the hammer was used to hit the core to remove approximately right-sized flakes that could be easily shaped into tools. What is meant by flake? The unwanted pieces of stones that should be removed to make a stone into a stone tool is known as a flake. Understood? Now, fire. As we all know, fire is the most important discovery in a man's history. So, how did early man discover fire? Finding about fire. Today, we use fire in homes, in bakeries, in garages, and factories. But many years ago, the earliest people used fire mostly for light, to cook food, or to scare away animals. Traces of ash have been found near the Karnataka caves in South India, and this shows that the ancient people there knew about the uses of fire. Nowadays, we talk a lot about a changing environment. But is the environment change happening only during modern days? No. Environmental change is a continuous process. How the early men faced and adapted themselves to a changing environment? Around 12,000 years ago, there were some big changes in the climate of the world, and most places became warmer and covered in grasslands. You all would have seen a movie called Ice Age, and it was not a fiction, it was actually a happened one. During Ice Age, the whole earth was very cold and covered with ice completely. But before 12,000 years, there were changes in the environment, and the climate of the earth also started changing, and the earth became warmer. This led to the formation of grasslands in many places. You all know the grasslands would lead to the growth in the number of herbivorous animals, and that was what happened. This in turn increased the number of herbivores. You all know what is a herbivore. A herbivore is an animal that feeds only on grasses and plants. such as deer, antelope, goat, sheep, and cattle. And people who hunted these animals now followed them and learnt about their food habits and breeding seasons. It is likely that this helped people to start thinking about herding and rearing these animals themselves. Fishing also became important. This was also a time when several grain bearing grasses such as wheat, barley, and rice started growing naturally on their own in different parts of the subcontinent. Men, women, and children probably collected these grains as food and learnt where they grew and when they ripened. This may have led them to think about growing plants on their own. This was the birth of the idea of agriculture, the job that most of the world does even today. Who did what? The earliest people hunted, gathered plant produce, made stone tools, and painted on cave walls. We do not know right now whether women hunted and men gathered food and made stone tools, whether it was the other way around, or whether everyone did every kind of work.
However, there are at least two possibilities. It is likely that both men and women may have done many of these things together. It is also possible that some tasks were done only by women and others only by men. And again, there could have been different practices in different parts of the subcontinent.
Key concepts: nomadic hunter gatherers. Hunter gatherers hunted animals, caught fishes and birds, and collected fruits, roots, nuts, seeds, leaves, stalks, and eggs. Hunting was not easy work because many animals are faster and stronger than humans. So, good hunters had to be alert, quick, and intelligent. Gatherers had to know which plants are edible, safe to eat, and the seasons in which specific fruits ripen. There were four major reasons for hunter gatherers to live nomadic lives. When resources in one area are finished, people have to move to another place. Animals move from place to place in search of food and water, so their hunter gatherers had to move also. Because different fruits grow in different places in different seasons, people travel to find them. And because water is also very important, people moved when nearby lakes or rivers dried up. How do we know about them? Archaeologists have found very old tools made of wood, stone, and bone. They were made and used by hunter-gatherers, and we can learn about their lives by studying these tools. They used tools to cut meat and bones, to scrape bark from trees and skins from animals, and to chop fruits and roots. Sometimes stones or bones were also fixed to wooden handles and used as weapons for hunting. Wood was also used as firewood and to build huts and houses. Where did they live? Most of them lived near sources of water, such as rivers, lakes, etc. They mostly settled in places where a lot of stones were available to make tools. Such sites are known as factory sites. We know those places were factory sites because we found many extra stones and chips there that people threw away when they were making their tools. If people lived in a factory site for a long time, we call that place a habitation cum factory site. The technology they used. The earliest technique is called a stone on stone, where a large stone was used as a hammer to hit a smaller stone called the core. The core was the stone that was used to create the tool, and it was flaked till it had the shape of the tool. The second technique is called pressure flaking, in which the core is placed on a firm surface. Then a piece of bone or stone tied to a wooden handle is used to flake the core and make the tool. Fire. You all know that the discovery of fire has changed man's life entirely. Traces of ashes have been found in the Kurnool caves in Andhra Pradesh. This shows that the people who lived there knew the use of fire. Fire might have been used for many things, such as to cook meat, to get light, and to protect against animals. Changes in the environment. Some big changes took place 12,000 years ago, and the climate of the earth started getting warmer. This led to the development of grasslands, which in turn led to the increase in the population of deer, sheep, goats, antelopes, etc. What is the connection between the development of grasslands and the growing population of deer, sheep, goats, etc.? You all would have learnt it in science. Deer, sheep, goats, antelopes, all these are herbivorous animals, and the development of grasslands led to the increase in population of all these herbivorous animals. So, people of that time also started living in these areas. Slowly, the concept of herding, keeping for milk, eggs, meat, etc., these animals developed. Herding these animals. Which animals? Deer, sheep, goats, all these herbivorous animals. The concept of herding animals developed. Fishing also became very common. During this time, grain-bearing plants such as wheat, rice, barley, etc. also started growing. Women and children collected these grains, and after some more time, people started cultivating those grains. They were all used for farming. Rock paintings. People lived in caves and painted their walls with different designs, stories, and animals. Many of these paintings have been found in Madhya Pradesh and southern Uttar Pradesh. These fine paintings show wild animals and stories, and they have amazing geometric patterns. Who did what? Although we know what the hunter-gatherers did, we do not know who did what. Did women and children also hunt, or did they only gather food? We don't know exactly. So, although we know a lot about what people did in the past, archaeologists are always working to know more. Hunsgi, Karnataka. Many Paleolithic age sites have been found in Hunsgi with different tools. What is meant by Paleolithic? You would have learnt about Paleolithic in your previous lesson. Paleolithic means Stone Age. They were mainly habitation cum factory sites. Habitation, you should recall what is habitation. we have referred to habitation cum factory site in this lesson. Most of these sites are near springs and small water bodies, which explains why people lived there. In this lesson, you learnt about how the early men got their food. They hunted animals and gathered roots, fruits, nuts, etc. from the forest. They used stone tools to enable them to hunt and gather food with ease. Hope you have understood the concepts taught. So it's time to test your understanding of the concepts. Are you ready to take up a quiz? Here comes your questions, and you need to choose the correct answer from the choices given. Easy, isn't it? Let's move on to the quiz. Have you completed the quiz? Were you able to answer all the questions? That's fantastic. Now, we would learn something new. We would know some interesting facts about early men, about the past prehistoric times. I was referring to the discovery of fire as a very important discovery in human history. But how did early man discover fire? Source of fire in Stone Age. At the beginning of the Stone Age, people didn't know how to make fire. So, they used naturally occurring fires caused by lightning. When we talk about cave paintings, you would have thought that the adults alone would have created the cave art. But do you know that even the children made cave paintings? That's interesting, isn't it? Generally, Stone Age refers to prehistoric time. But the people of North Sentinel Island in Asia are isolated from the rest of the world, and they live a Stone Age lifestyle even today. Science says human beings evolved from apes. Have you ever wondered how elephants and tigers evolved? Mammoths, they were considered to be the forefathers of present day elephants, and the tigers evolved from saber-toothed cats. So naturally, the animals of the Stone Age would have been mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and cave bears. They all lived at the same time as the Stone Age people. Do you know? Even 35,000 years ago, humans painted two-dimensional and three-dimensional images of the world around them. Okay, what is the difference between a two-dimensional image and a three-dimensional image? Find it out. And if you find the difference, you would be really amazed. Unusual trait related to food. Humans have an unusual trait of finding food in one place and eating it in another. What is meant by trait? Try to find the meaning from the dictionary. Adapting. The main features that define our species today evolved over 6 million years as our early human ancestors started adapting to some sudden changes in the world. Dateline: 2 million years ago, the Paleolithic age starts, that is, the Stone Age starts. 12,000 years ago, the climate starts changing. 10,000 years ago, the Mesolithic age starts. Mesolithic is the age between the Old Stone Age and the New Stone Age. So far, you have learnt few concepts from the lesson. Then you did your quiz. You knew some interesting facts about prehistoric period and early men. Now it's time for activities. You all love doing activities, right? Now, I have given you 2 activities which you could do it with ease. List 10 things we do with fire. Make 2 columns in your notebook. In the left hand column, list the foods that hunter-gatherers ate. In the right hand column, list some of the foods that you eat nowadays. Do you see any similarities or differences? Share them with your parents. Food for thought. Am I going to give any recipe for any kind of food? No, not at all. I'm going to give you some HOTS, higher order thinking questions, for which you have to think and answer. Are you ready? Read the questions, understand them properly, and try to answer. Thank you.